The Moondrop Joker. If there was ever a punchline that didn't land, this is it. Hey, I'm DMS. You're watching the Headphone Show. If you like headphones, if you like high-end audiophile stuff and all that jazz, maybe jazz too. Andrew Park likes jazz. Look, he's sitting right here in the background.
Jazz is objectively the only correct genre of music.
Pull up a seat. Let's talk about a bad joke. So Moondrop has been stepping it up more and more in their headphones lately. From the Void, they went to the Venus, from the Venus to the Para, and then there's this. Let's start off with build and comfort first, then we'll talk about subjective sound and then frequency response. It feels cheap. It feels very cheap. Listen to this. They also don't swivel outwards enough, which means when I put this on my head, the bottoms are just straight up open. Unless I push them onto my head, I get only temple pressure, and the bottom doesn't seal at all. As I'm sure you can guess, this is going to cause sound problems, which we'll talk about later. But it also causes comfort problems, because no one likes having only temple pressure. And that's where most of the weight is. I get a little bit on top. The headband is actually really nice on top of this. I love the headband. But because of the way these pads are set up with this swivel, all the pressure's right here, and I hate it. Glasses on, glasses off, doesn't matter. I'm only getting contact with these on my temples. And the 5 other people who have tried these at my house have all said the same thing. Now, the pads themselves are actually pretty nice. They're relatively deep enough. They have pretty good padding on the inside of them. The adjustment mechanism is decent. It's not game-changing. Dual 3.5mm entry on the bottom, and these come with a piece of sandpaper because you can sand off this paint on the side, showing a brass-like patina underneath. So you can give these whatever sort of roughed up look you want. That's actually kind of cool. The cable they come with is fine. It's very similar to, in fact, it might be the same cable that comes with the Moondrop Para, I'm not sure. It looks like it may be. The cable's fine. I would prefer like a red ring on one side instead of the very tiny writing on here that says right and left. That way I don't have to read it every time. I can just look and see, red ring, right side. But it is what it is. Moondrop say this is a professional studio headphone. I don't think this build would hold up in that environment, and if it doesn't seal on anybody's head, it's not going to be good for isolation, but maybe that'll change in sound. Let's talk about it. So, is this a studio headphone when it comes to sound? No. Quick answer. I mean, it's bright. It's really, 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 really bright. It's like if you take diffuse field and said, you know what I'd love on top of that? Way more treble. Like diffuse field and then 8 more decibels of treble spike on top of that sometimes. Not good. We're seeing more and more studio headphones out there, things that are a bit more Harman-like in their tuning. Things like the MM500, or now with SonarWorks reference and Sound ID reference. I measured a whole bunch of headphones calibrated to their target. It was very similar to the MM500, so strong ear gain and then a bit less treble, around like the 4K plus areas. That is closer to what I would consider studio reference, not just give it tons of treble and that makes a studio reference, which is what these did. If you were to try and mix a track to where it sounds good on these, that track is going to sound really messed up. Do they make up for it in other areas like detail, soundstage, imaging? I mean, not really. I did try to EQ these down. I tried to correct them, but it took a ton of EQ, and I was still never as happy with them as I would have been with just like an AKG K361 or K371. I do think that the build on these is a little bit better than the K361 or the K371, but the K361 is a monumentally better sounding headphone, and it actually seals on a human-shaped head and on a Andrew Park shaped head back here.
Dr. Olive also prefers jazz, so there.
It's just sibilance incarnate. It's like if the DT990 somehow had less bass and more treble, which is just a nightmare. I would love to see Moondrop take this design and fix it to where it actually can seal on the head and put some effort into the tuning. I mean, I'm sure they tried some with this tuning, but it does feel very much like a case of, we made something really bright. Just label it as a studio thing, good enough, let's start selling it. And these days, people hold products to a higher standard. That might have worked 20 years ago, that might have worked 30 years ago, but not in 2023. You can't sell a product like this and expect it to really do well and expect people to really like it. That said, I do think that Moondrop cares. I mean, they've been improving their products over time, and I would expect that next time they release a closeback, it's much better than this, but we'll see. Let's take a break from this. Let's talk about frequency response. Wait a minute, that's not Andrew. That's not Resolve. That's the Brüel & Kjær 4128C. Silly me. I always get them mixed up. You can tell they're related though, right? Yeah, I put a headphones.com shirt on this guy. Anyway, I've got the frequency response pulled up here on my phone. Let's talk about it. Now, I, for the life of me, could not get a bass seal on this thing. So what I ended up having to do to even get the result we see here is to force a seal. Luckily, it didn't change the mids and the highs, but if you're a human head that this does actually seal on, this is how much bass you're probably going to get. If you have a remotely normal human head shape, you're going to get almost none of this bass. It's just going to roll off into oblivion right out of the mid-range. Speaking of, the mid-range is actually decent until we start getting up near, say, 1.9K, and it skyrockets up to 2.3 kilohertz. That is a lot of treble. If you don't know how to read these graphs, by the way, this is a much more detailed way of presenting them than we used to. You can check out a link in the video description on how this system works. More or less, instead of just looking at a target line, we're getting a lot more information here by looking at the average listener preference window. That dotted line through the middle of the whole thing, that's what the average person would consider as neutral, and that's pretty close to the Harman target. The window above and below it, around that, well, some people will want more or less treble, some people will want more or less bass, but when you get outside of that range, that's when things start getting bright and dark. And this goes way outside of that range, several times. By around 3.5 kilohertz, we're back within the range, and then by 5.7, we're right back up into super bright territory. I think I hear the sound of Beyerdynamic getting jealous. I would describe this as very bright, not good, problematic, all around suboptimal, definitely not a reference or a studio product, and I don't think audiophiles are going to like it either. If someone has a very serious medical deficiency in their hearing, this could compensate for it. That's not meant as an insult, that I'm actually being completely serious. If someone does actually have considerable hearing loss, this could compensate it to a degree where it might start to sound normal. For everyone who does not have hearing loss, I would not recommend the Moondrop bad punchline that didn't land. It sucks because I was actually really excited about this headphone, and then I got it in and I put it on my head. Anyway, time to ship this thing back. And do you really want me to talk more about it? It's just not good. I'm just gonna tell you it's not good over and over again. We could do this for another 20 minutes, but I don't think I'm gonna waste your time today. Let's get to some other videos. Let me start turning on some headphones you actually want to hear about. So with that said, I'm gonna wrap this video up, guys. If you liked it, leave a like down below. Comment letting me know what you want to see in the future. If you want to get active in the community, you can hit the forums or Discord, both available at the link in the video description. As always, don't forget to stick around, subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Till next one, guys. Peace.